Welcome everybody, and welcome to Talking Philly Sports with Matty B here on the Edge of Philly Sports Network with your boy Matty B. It is Monday, October the 17th, 2022, and I know you must be wondering what the hell is he doing on a Monday, folks? I'm on a Monday because it's a good problem to have. The Philadelphia Phillies have advanced to the National League Championship Series, and of course, as you know, I do a little ditty here on the EOP called the Fighting's Final, and we are trying to kind of clear some space on that calendar in order for me to continue to give you the best in Philadelphia Philly post-game coverage as we go deeper into these playoffs in 2022. And we'll get into the Phillies. We're going to get into the Flyers. We're going to get into some of the Eagles. We're going to do all that tonight because, boy, there is a lot to talk about here in Philadelphia these days as we're coming off of an epic. And I know I'm not the first person to say this, and I sure as hell ain't going to be the last before it's all said and done with. But an epic weekend of Philadelphia sports, a weekend in which relationships probably crumbled, a weekend in which relationships probably blossomed, and a weekend where people's fortunes were lost and won at a drop of a dime. And you know what? You really can't ask for anything better than what we experienced over the last weekend. And then you got the autumn backdrop to go along with it all. I've said this before. If there's a heaven out there, and I hope there is, this past weekend is what my heaven would be. Just continuous great Philadelphia sports and the fall. Yeah, I'm a weird guy like that, folks. I love the autumn. So here we are, gathered here on this Monday evening, and it's kind of is there much of a difference between Monday and Tuesday? I don't know. Maybe there isn't, but we're gathered here on this Monday night to kind of talk and dissect everything that has happened. And of course, I am again one of many that's now get his opportunity to do that. And maybe I'm going to do it a little bit differently than what some of you out there might be willing to hear from. Obviously, we got some great stories. We got some great topics. We got topics that will make your head spin. We got topics that will make you go, and we got some topics that'll make you go, yeah. So let's get into this and let's start everything off on this show like we typically do here on the Talking Philly Sports with Matty B show. And that is this day in Philadelphia sports history, folks. Because I'm not scheduled to be on Monday, I was supposed to be on Tuesday like I'm normally supposed to be on. I had a Tuesday, October the 18th, this day in Philadelphia sports history. So and then I pivoted and I looked back on October 17th. Not much sexiness going on, but there was a sexy story on October the 18th, 1967, and we're going to go ahead and go with that one. On that date, October 18th, which would be tomorrow, 1967, which was about 6 years before I was born. Wow. Man, 6 years before I was born. Is that right? Did I just have like a realization of mortality? Was I born really? That's right. I was born during the Vietnam War. I was born during the Nixon presidency. Can you imagine that? How many out there even know who Nixon was? And I was born while he was president. Anyway, on this date, on October 18th, 1967, the Philadelphia Flyers won their very first game. It was a road game against the St. Louis Blues, who were a fellow expansion team that year. And the score was 2-1 Flyers, thus launching the career and the franchise that would become known. Well, they were known as the Flyers then, but launching them into the stratosphere of the National Hockey League. And here we are 55 years and almost a day later. And we're talking about some Flyers hockey as well. And this is probably the weirdest lead-in story of my show. And then I really kind of debated on where I wanted to put this in. But let's go ahead and lead off with this one because this is one of those weird, happy stories. This is one of these stories that people are probably not expecting, and nor were they hoping or thinking it was going to happen. But we sit here 2 days into the Flyer 2022-2023 season, and your Flyers are 2-0. 2-0, and the way they've done it, and it's to me the most surprising, right? Opening night against the Devils, who are a team that is chock full with a bunch of young talent, a lot of it. But if you look at the Devils a little bit inside the numbers, if you look at the Devils a little bit inside or behind the bench or in the dressing room, whatever you want to say, they are a team that's probably has less of an identity than the Flyers do. And that's what happens sometimes when you bring on this young talent. You got to find a way to bring it all together. You just can't throw players on the team and say, go out there and win me a Stanley Cup. Now, there's a lot of other factors involved. You got to bring together a culture. You got to bring together a system. You got to bring together roles for these guys. And unfortunately, not all of them can be the 105 goal scorers that they were in major junior hockey. They all have to kind of assume a role. And right now, the Devils are just sort of kind of just sorting out all that young talent. And, the Flyers might have snuck one by them. I don't know. But on opening night back on Thursday, the Flyers beat the Devils 5-3. And they did it emphatically. They got punched in the mouth coming out the game. Alexander Holtz, who, as I mentioned before, if you guys catch my post-game show here called Clear the Ice, the Flyers post-game show, by the way, it's on a temporary hiatus. Once again, a good problem to have because of the Phillies, but we will be back hopefully. Well, let's just see. We'll be back. I promise we'll be back. But let's hope that, the Phillies are world champions before I come back. But Alexander Holtz, who is a young player in the Devil system, I believe he was drafted 7th overall a couple years ago. Debuted, or actually didn't debut, but he scored his first NHL goal on Thursday night against the Flyers. Now, Alexander Holtz, I know him. I personally know the guy. I worked with him last year for a time last season. I worked with the Utica Comets, which are the New Jersey Devils AHL affiliate. And Alexander Holtz and Fabian Zutterlin and Kevin Ball are players that are currently on the Devils now that were staples with the Comets last year. All of them really good young players and really good dudes, right? So it was nice to see Alexander get his first NHL goal, one of a many I believe that will happen. But the Flyers then answered the bell. They answered the bell, and they answered every bell in that game, and they did it as a team. They did it as a group of players who were focused on one thing, and that wasn't themselves. It was the team. They played chippy hockey, they played intelligent hockey, and they played young, raw hockey. And in result, they outlasted a young, raw team like the Devils 5-3. A surprise, yes. 5 goals. They actually scored a power play goal. They were 1 for 3 on the power play that night, which, of course, if you guys are keeping score at home like I have been, the Flyers finished the season last year at 12.5% efficiency rate on the power play. God awful, literally the worst in the league. And they get off the schneid and they go 1 for 3 on the power play on opening night. Very impressive. I'm telling you, it's impressive. You got to understand where we started from with this thing, right? Then they come out on Saturday in the middle of Philadelphia Philly fever, where the town was painted red and white. They go into they play at home against the Vancouver Canucks, welcoming back former Flyer head coach Mike Yao, who's now an assistant with Vancouver. They welcome them back. They promptly then go down 2-0 to Vancouver, battle their way back to tie it, and then late in the game, Travis Konechny, with his 3rd goal in 2 games, gives the Flyers the 3-2 lead. And then they eventually win the game 3-2. And guess what, folks? Another power play goal. That's right. Another power play goal. Now, this time it was 1 for 5 on the power play, a little less inspiring. But through 2 games, the Flyers are 2 for 8 on the power play. They're at a 25% efficiency. That is 12% higher than what they finished last season. Now, I understand. We're 2 games into a season. 2 games into an 82-game season, right? It is what it is. I have no delusions of grandeur what the Flyers are. But as I said all throughout the summer, and I've said it on this program, I think the Flyers are going to be a interesting team this year, a competitive team, a scrappy team, a team that plays a little bit of fire, a team that plays with a little bit of, oomph, so to speak. And that's obviously attributed to John Tortorella and what he has brought here. Now, the Flyers have definitely been faced with some adversity here this season. They're not really that good of a talented team to begin with, and then they start the season just decimated with injuries. We already know the Ryan Ellis drama. We already know the Sean Couturier drama. But then you throw Risto in there. You throw Bobby Brink in there. Now you got what? You got Owen Tippett that went down, and then now you got who else went down? Somebody just went down, or Risto has now been transferred to the IR. And yet they still continue to play well. Now, this week, starting tomorrow, the Flyers are on a 3-game road trip, an interesting early season test for this team. A road trip that's going to take them through Florida and Nashville. They're going to play the perennial Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning, a perennial playoff team in the Florida Panthers, and a perennial playoff team in the Nashville Predators. We're going to have a little bit of a better understanding of what this team is coming out of the weekend next week than we do right now. the best case scenario, what you go 2-1 or maybe 1-1-1. I don't know, but again, I've said this from the very top of the show or very top of my of this hockey season is that we're not judging, or at least I'm not judging the Flyers this season on wins and losses. It's not what this is. This is not one of those years. And whatever wins we do get, and if we do make a run, that's just gravy, right? That's just extra. That's just a cherry on top of what I think the message is this season. And that was a message of discovery. This team's trying to find out who they are, what they got, and what they got going forward. Travis Sanheim inked a big, huge 8-year contract last week, right before opening night. A contract in which I don't like at all. Travis Sanheim to me is, as I've said this before too, he's the poor man Phil Myers. I much would rather have taken that money next summer because he was about to be a free agent and use that to kind of reshape this team for the future. I'm not a big Travis Sanheim fan, and I sure as hell ain't a big 8-year, $6-point-some-odd million a year Travis Sanheim fan when we're a team that's kind of up against the cap a little bit. But if you want to lock in some young talent, and obviously they made a decision that Travis Sanheim is part of this team's future, and I guess they know better than I do. But all I know is I see a lot of number 6, and that's because he's always behind the play and out of position as a defenseman. So maybe it works out. I don't know. But the Flyers have gotten off to a very surprising 2-0 start and are playing some really good competitive hockey. And I hope the hell it continues to roll. Michael hits me up with my Phillies victorious. 2 teams bit the dust with 2 more hopeful. Will be out also fighting all the way from Alabama. Michael from Alabama, thank you for chiming in. And don't forget to like and subscribe to us there on YouTube and on all the social media platforms that we come out here on EOP. And I guess it's a perfect segue, Michael. Let's jump into them fighting Phils, if you will. Let's kind of backtrack now. Let's go back to Friday before Game 3. All right, coming out of that Game 2, like very uninspiring loss. That very uninspiring 3-0 loss at the hands of the Braves. Zach Wheeler pitched well. Zach Wheeler pitched really well in that game. Got absolutely no run support. Got absolutely no offensive support. The Phillies were stuck back in their old ways of the season. The continues frustrations from Kyle Schwarber, Rhys Hoskins, and Bryce Harper continued. Just really let the bad taste in your mouth, especially after what they did in Game 1. And then you come back here to Philly. Now I'm I guess maybe in a minority. I kind of thought they were going to handle their business here. I never thought this thing would go back to Atlanta. I thought either way, either it be the Phillies or the Braves, it was going to end in Philly. Oh, thankfully it was the Phillies. And they answered the bell in Game 3, obviously, what to me was the most important, which was the reason why this series ended up the way it did. When you come out and you smack the Braves around 9-1. And that takes all the air out of your sail. Then they follow that up with an 8-3 win on Friday or Saturday to win the series and then punch their ticket to the NLCS for the first time in 10 years. It's awesome. There's really no words for me to describe what this season has meant to me personally. There's no words for me to really describe on what this season has meant to the city, for the Phillies. And obviously when you're out of the playoffs for 11 years, when you take a back seat for as many years as we have, and when you factor the fact that, we've been a franchise for going on 140 years and we have 2 world championships to that credit, any little bit of postseason action is definitely needed and appreciated. So the fact that they keep this thing running all the way to San Diego now, and of course we all know that San Diego took out the Dodgers, thus setting up a situation in the National League where the 2 remaining teams are 2 wildcard teams, 2 teams that basically chase each other all season. And the Phillies finished 2 games behind the Padres, which everybody's like, well, we had those 2 games back against the Cubs or 2 games, against the Diamondbacks. Listen, if we would have finished higher than the Padres, then we would have played the Mets. It would have thrown this thing all off. So who knows if we would even be standing in this position right now. So I'll take the road factor here. I don't care about going on the road for Game 1 and 2. I don't care about going on the road for any of these games. I'd play these games on Saturn if they wanted to. I just think I'm very confident in what this Phillies baseball team is capable of doing right now. So to me, it doesn't really matter where these games are played. I believe the series will end in 5. I think that they'll split in San Diego, and I think the Phillies will take all three here, and they will win the series in 5 games, thus punching their ticket to the World Series for the first time since 2009. Now, let's backtrack. So, how do we get here? How are we standing in the National League Championship Series with the team that has so much power, yet such a limited ability on how to hit small ball and play small? How are we here? How are we standing? We're standing here because of pitching, and that's pure and simple pitching. And I know it might sound weird to some people, but pitching is why we're here. I've had the distinct pleasure of hosting, as I mentioned, a post game show here on EOP called The Fight Is Final. I've done every game, every single Phillies game this season, to include the playoffs, and include about maybe half of their spring training games, half of games they had. I've watched just about every pitch, and to watch what this team has done, and how frustrating it's been to watch them offensively, but how satisfying and frustrating at the same time it's been to watch the starting pitching, because you watch pitchers like Wheeler and Nola, who've been doing this all season long, give you efforts every game to put you in a position to win. I mean, you're not going to get dominant pitching efforts every time. That's just not the way life is. But Wheeler and Nola had put the Phillies in position to win basically every start that they've had. Offensively, the team has let them down, but the pitching never did, for the most part. There was that time out there, the trip to Arizona and San Fran and Chicago. Things weren't looking good there, and they dipped. It happens. Arms get tired. It's a long season, but consistently speaking, the starting pitching has been there since game 1. And it gets lost because of the Kyle Schwarbers and the Nick Castellanos and the Rhys Hoskins and the Bryce Harper drama and the JT drama. It gets lost of how effective this starting pitching has been for this team this year. And as I said, it starts with Wheeler and Nola, but it doesn't end there. You throw in Ranger Suarez, who got off to kind of a slow start, but then he rounded into form. Kyle Gibson, who, let's face it, he was up and down, sideways, he was all over the place. But if you go back and look at his starts, the majority of them were quality starts. They weren't all good, but they were quality. Zach Eflin, before the injury, he was a rock at number 3. This is why the Phillies are here now, is because of those 5 individuals. You throw in Syndergaard, who hasn't pitched well, but then he comes up big in game 4. You throw in that, and then you talk about a blowpen. That's right, I said it. The blowpen, or the bullpen now, who completely redeems themselves. That's why we're here, folks. I mean, you can sit here and debate me all day long and tell me, well, we hit 5 home runs a game. Yeah, we did. But we also have a leadoff hitter who's batting .210, right? We also have absolutely no production from the top part of our lineup for the most part throughout the season. So how do we win 87 games? We won it on our arms. That's how we did it. Now, we've gotten hitting. We have, in times. And we've gotten it in bunches. But we've never gotten it consistently. We never have. And now that the playoffs are here, things are starting to get a little bit more consistent offensively. They're not where I want them to be yet. But as you enter the NLCS, coming off of the last 2 games where you scored a combined total of what was it, 17 runs, and you'd thrown the defending world champions, you definitely got to be feeling good about your offensive rounding in the form, and then your pitching continuing what they're doing moving forward. San Diego is going to be tough. There's no history there between the two. The Phillies and Padres have never faced each other in the playoffs ever. It doesn't really matter, I guess. You look at San Diego, and they got Darvish, they got Snell, they got Musgrove, they got some good pitching. They got a fabulous back end of their bullpen. But you know what? Let's leave the back end of their bullpen in the back end. So this is going to be a good series. I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that this is going to be a really, really, really good series against 2 teams that are pretty much, when they face each other this year, they pretty much averaged out. The Phillies were 4-3 against the Padres on the season. But it's a tale of 2 teams. They played each other in May and June. Both these 2 teams are definitely different. We have not seen the Padres since the addition of Hader or Bell or Soto. We haven't seen the Padres since they've added those players. Now, we've seen our share of Josh Bell and Juan Soto with the Nationals. And don't forget what we did to Josh Hader this season. So we've seen those players. We just haven't seen them in Padre uniforms. The Padres are a better, they're more of a balanced offensive team that we faced this season in the playoffs so far. When you look at the Cardinals with Ariando and Goldschmidt, and then you look at the Braves with what Olsen and Acuna. Now we got a little bit more balance going on through the San Diego Padre lineup. They can kind of get you at different areas. We're going to get through that heart of that order with Bell and Soto and Machado, but then you got the Cronenworths of the world and the others to deal with the Nolas and the Proctor, whatever that guy's name, the leadoff guy. I mean, they're more of a balanced attack. So it's going to be a good series, but it's a winnable series, and it's a series that I don't fear the Phillies losing it. And I think the Phillies will take it in 5, thus punching their ticket to the World Series. And I'm telling you right now, if they can ever get Game 5 between the Guardians and Yankees played, I'm looking at a rematch, baby. A 2009 World Series rematch between the Phillies and the Yankees. And let's end our inability to beat the New York Yankees. Let's take them to task, and let's exercise all the demons of the 50s and the 60s and the 40s against the New York Yankees. And let's end their dominance over us in the World Series. So that's what I'm looking at as a World Series. Yeah. Yeah. So Chris says, go help the Philly sports guy get to San Diego if you can donate or share. Yeah. So Jamie, PSG, is trying to go to San Diego and, take the Philly fire with him. And he's trying to raise some money. Head over to his Facebook page. He's a good dude. Help him out, man. I've helped him out. I donated. So help him out so he can go to San Diego and make his dream come true and all of our dreams come true as we try to fight our way to the National League Championship Series. But Phillies in 5. No pitching matchups have been announced. I think they're saying maybe Darvish will be going for the Padres tomorrow. I'm not really sure. The Phillies have not announced anybody. I would be surprised if it wasn't Wheeler. If it's not Wheeler, then it's got to be Suarez, right? Are the Phillies looking to set up the 6 and 7 matchup? I don't know, but right now I would be very surprised if it was not Wheeler. You got to play for the game in front of you. If we can get a split in San Diego, or even better, we can get a sweep. You got to play for the two games that are in front of you in San Diego. So pitching matchups have not been announced, but the series obviously will start tomorrow 8:00. Then on Wednesday around 4:30, and then over the weekend here in Philly, all night games, except for Sundays, 2:00 start. So here's to it, man, and here's to a great ride through the NLCS. It is. It's going to be a great ride, and it just continues that October flavor, that October fun, and I'm glad I'm part of it. I really am, and as I've said this multiple times, and I obviously don't have a crystal ball, and I didn't know that I was starting a post game show during a great pennant run. But I would not have anything less of what I've experienced this season since March, or since April. April 8th was the first show we did, Phillies and A's. I would not change it for a world. It's been a great run. I've enjoyed it. And of course, if the longer they go, the deeper they go, just entrenches this season as one of those non-forgettable ever seasons that I will ever have. So it's been a great year, and let's keep it running at least for another couple more weeks. We have about what is it? We have 8 wins left, and let's take that thing and let's finish it off, and let's bring home our 3rd ever World Series championship. I got a spot next to the 08 World Championship pennant that would look good for 2022. So here goes to the Phillies as they make their run to San Diego and continue this train moving. So final thing I want to talk about is something that's near and dear to my heart, and that's, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, folks, again, I don't know much. I don't know if you know much about me, but I'm a jaded Eagle fan, okay? And the reason why I'm jaded is because I'm a little older, all right? I have history that predates Andy Reid, okay? I remember this team before Andy Reid came here. I remember a lot of the insufficiencies or the straight up, gut punches that they would deliver to fans on a year-to-year basis before Andy Reid. And I don't mean we lost in the second round of the playoffs or the championship game or the Super Bowl. No, I mean like we can't even get out of our own way and win 3 games all season. That kind of badness, right? Dick Vermeil, the end of Dick Vermeil, Marion Campbell, man. Buddy Ryan, um, Ray Rhodes. The list goes on and on. I became an Eagle fan in '80. The first Eagle memory I ever have was the '80 championship game against the Cowboys. Just like one of the first Phillies memories I ever have is the '80 World Series against the Royals. I mean, what a way to be indoctrinated into the Philadelphia sports world in 1980. So I became an Eagle fan basically at that time, right? And I thought that was what it was supposed to be like every year. Of course, I would find out very soon later that it wasn't. And I've had a carrot dangling in front of my face for a lot of years. And a lot of years I wore my green sunglasses. And a lot of years I said, this was the year. I don't care. We're going to win it all. And a lot of years I was disappointed. To a certain point, to when we got up to the Nick Sirianni era here in town, I was done wearing green sunglasses. You know, crap is crap of a product. I don't care how much of your allegiance with the team is and how much you love this team or how much you've lived and died with this team. I've lived and died with this team a lot more than a lot of younger Eagle fans out there who all they can recollect is what Andy Reid. And I mean, I have a little bit more history there. All right. So I'm not here to defend my Eagle fandom. No, certainly not. I'm not here to defend it. But I am definitely here to tell you that I am not wavered off of my prediction of the Philadelphia Eagles in 2022. I still think they're an 8-9 football team. I really do. I got it. They're 6-0. They're playing some really good football right now, and they're beating up on some really bad football teams. Now, I maybe that's to support my narrative. I don't know, but when I look at the schedule, and I've looked at the schedule, and I'm looking at because we're at the unofficial midway point of the Eagles season right now as they head into their bye week. I don't necessarily see the Eagles losing any more games. And it's messed up because of the opponents. What has happened to the other teams in this league? I mean, if the Philadelphia Eagles are this much far and above everybody else, did I miss something over the summer? Did the Green Bay Packers take themselves too much for granted and now they stink? Buccaneers. I mean, you go team by team, the Rams. I mean, things are just not, they've all kind of gone haywire. And I'm not saying that the Eagles are not a good team. I think they are. But they're not a Super Bowl team. They're not a Super Bowl team. A team that can average, the team that's averaging 5.5 points in the second half of games in 2022 is not a Super Bowl team. They're not. They're playing well. Their defense is doing their job. Their secondary is the best I've seen in 20 years. They've, the way they create turnovers, they create havoc, they pressure the quarterback, they create stuff on the field. I'm not saying that. But a team that averages 5.5 points in the second half is not a Super Bowl team. They're not. They're just absolutely not in any way, shape, or form. And unfortunately, I believe the other shoe will drop. It's just a matter of when. And just a matter of what point of the season that shoe drop. And what really concerns me is if we go deep into this season, and then right now, as we get ready to come out of the bye, or we're heading into the bye, and we'll talk the Cowboy game here in a second, but as we come out of that bye, and we're faced with the Steelers, Commanders, and what? Who is it? Indianapolis or something like that? I don't necessarily see the Eagles losing any of those games. Or is it no? It's the Steelers, Commanders, and who is it? Is it Indianapolis? It is the Steelers, Texans, and Commanders. I don't see them losing any of those games. So there's a good point that they may be 9-0. And they may run this thing all the way out. And they may finish in this weird 14-3 type season, or 15-2 or something gaudy like that. But they're not winning a Super Bowl. They're just not there yet. They're not that type of team. They're too inconsistent in certain areas, and offense in the second half is one of those areas. And when you're only scoring 5.5 points on the game in the second half, you can't live that way. The Buffalo Bills are not going to allow you to score 5.5 points in the second half. The Kansas City Chiefs are not going to allow you to win and score 5.5 points in the second half. The Los Angeles Chargers, and we can continue, and I know I'm talking a lot of AFC teams. NFC is pretty bland right now. But if they're going to continue to score 5.5 points, and you see how I'm hitting on the old 5.5, it is a narrative. But it's not my narrative. It's the team's narrative right now. This team's offense disappears in the second half of football games. Why? Why is that? Is somebody being out coached? Is somebody being out adjusted? Do the Eagles not adjust their offense and yet other teams adjust their defense? Are they falling victim to that? And it takes them almost 3/4 of the second half to kind of figure out the adjustment made on them? Is that what's happening? Or is the game plan change? Does Nick Sirianni play this, conservative uh, clock control type of style, which he's been able to do because he's been up going into halftime by such high scores? And I understand some of that. Some of that's football. I got that. But what happens when we come out of the half tied at 15, or 14 or, tied at 17 and we got to score points in the second half? They haven't been able to do it all season. So I am enjoying the ride just like as any other Eagle fan is. They're 6-0. But it's a sham. It's a sham 6-0. They're not winning a Super Bowl. They're not. But they're getting better. And some of the moves that Howie Roseman has made have been good moves. A.J. Brown has proven that is probably it might go down as Howie Roseman's best move ever, is bringing in A.J. Brown. It might. That's what type of player A.J. Brown is. As I said, the additions to the secondary, Bradbury, Johnson, these guys have taken this thing and turned it on its ear. They are a ball-hawking, aggressive secondary. 15 turnovers. Most of them are interceptions. Defensive front, not getting as much push as I think we would like to see consistently, but they're doing enough. Son Reddick is a beast all over the field. So the moves have been good. Don't know if the coaching has been that good. So the Eagles last night played the Dallas Cowboys in a game where first place was on the line in the NFC East. The Giants had won earlier today. They've moved their record to 5-1, and I don't know how that's possible. And the Cowboys and Eagles were on a collision course for a first place showdown at the Link. If the Cowboys would have won, all three of these teams would have been 5-1 today. And there'd be some cloudiness of who was who. So the Eagles, to their credit, went out there and did what they had to do. But they did it again in that frustrating way. No points in the first quarter. Then they go off for 20 points in the second quarter. And that's it until the fourth quarter where they score 6. So we're almost looking at a whole half of football of no points being scored. But nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about the disappearance of their offense and where does it go for about half of every game. No, we just want to talk about the 6-0. We don't want to we don't even want to adjust that or address it. We just want to glance over it and say that, this is a Super Bowl team. 5.5 points in the second half of football games is not going to win you a Super Bowl. But the Eagles did what they had to do. And they did it at the end of the game with ball control. Matter of fact, that whole game was ball control. It was really a class in ball control in the first half. Everything was in front of them. It was all RPO driven. It was all, grinding it out. Not many attempts were made down the field, which I understand why. They took what the defense was giving them. Jalen Hurts was an effective game manager last night. He made some plays. He didn't make some plays. He had some drops. But once again, the offense disappeared for a whole half. Why is that? And it's not the first game it's happened. So 6-0, 5-0 in the conference, 2-0 in the division, and 1-0 against the AFC. You could not have asked for anything better. That is a best case scenario if I ever heard of a best case scenario for the Philadelphia Eagles as they head into their bye week, awaiting the Pittsburgh Steelers on the other end of that. So rejoice. I'm rejoicing. I'm enjoying them. I'm just not all in. And I have a right to be that way. I have a right to feel that way. And yes, for now and forever, let me echo my sentiments. Fire Howie. That will never change. I don't care. He's a weasel. Fire him. Nobody knows what's going on behind closed doors with that team. Fire that weasel. Now and forever. Hashtag Fire Howie forever. So for those of you who thought I was wavering, I'll never waver. I want him out. But it's good. It's good. 6-0. Solid football against some decent competition. The Cowboys were good. down their starting quarterback, but they're a good team, really good defensive team. Eagles did what they had to do. They answered the bell. But they took a game that was getting away from the Cowboys, and they let the Cowboys back in, and then they sealed the deal at the end. What is happening to their offense in the second half of games? But it's all good in the hood, as they say, folks, as we are, again, I precipice all this by saying what a great weekend it was in Philadelphia sports, and what a great week we got to look forward to here in Philadelphia sports, and specifically on the Edge Philly Sports Network, along with Painted Lions and Devereaux Sports. This is our snapshot of a lineup. Of course, tonight you had the Sully squad that was on earlier at 6 o'clock, Party on Broad at 7, Birds of the Round Table, 8, and then me talking Philly Sports with Matty B right now. Tomorrow, you got some Kelly Green Hour, Chalk Talk. You got the Sixers and Celtics post game, folks. That's right. Sixers are kicking things off for their 2022-23 season. And, of course, me, Matty B, coming at you with the Fighting's Final after game one sometime later tomorrow night, but I'll be here to bring it to you. Those of you who are dealing with some things in life and you need some questions answered about workman's comp, motor vehicle accidents, personal injury, criminal law, Dave Cherry, 610-565-0300. Tell them the boys at EOP sent you. Don't forget some of the great things that's going on down there at Philly Sports Trips. They got they got the Houston trip coming up here in a couple of weeks. And, of course, don't forget about their home tailgate. They got Sixer stuff. They got Flyer stuff. I think they're getting ready to go to Nashville this weekend as well. Go ahead and check out them, phillysportstrips.com. And, of course, if you're in the Delco region of the world and you need to get to a bar, well, there's only one bar you need to go to in Delco, and that's Dolan's. Tell them I said, hey. So that's really all I got for that. So, listen, folks, it's always a pleasure. What's going on, Matty B? Dave, how are you tonight? I'm doing well. Oh, wow, it's the fish hobbyist. Aren't you a Mets fan? I haven't heard from you in a while. Beating the Vikings showed the way for this team. Yeah, it might have been. How about them Eagles? Yeah, they're doing well, 6-0. Fuji, what's going on? Nothing much. Just living the dream right now with Philadelphia sports. Been a great weekend. Folks, it's always an honor to come at you. As I said, when you have a weekend like you had this past weekend, it makes it all worthwhile. It makes all the pain worthwhile. It makes all the suffering that you've done as a Philadelphia sports fan worthwhile. To see us at the top of the Philadelphia sports mountain, or the top of let's face it, the national sports mountain all weekend. We had all kinds of national people through this town this weekend. When you host a playoff game in baseball and then a primetime game for the football team, it was just a great weekend. It was a great weekend to be alive. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. Thank you, Al. Matty B on Monday. What a treat. Yes. And let's hope that's the way it is for a while, at least for 2 more weeks, right? Nick Sirianni, say it. Say it. What do you mean? Nick Sirianni, say it. I ain't going to say it. Nick Sirianni is a clown. All right. Folks, that's going to do it for me. As always, a pleasure and an honor. Be ready for another great week. It's going to be some awesome. We got Phillies action, we got Sixers action, and we got Flyers action. No Eagles this week, but maybe it's good that they take some time off and let some things kind of work themselves out. So until we talk again, folks, what do they say? Well, that is the news, and I am out of here.